This is going to be a fun one, and it won't be as heavy as some of the other things we talked about today. We're here to talk about whether or not virtual reality is a fresh and creative new way to experience the world around us, or if it's just a cute distraction, which I believe is one of the first times something that began with a $2 billion investment was described as a cute distraction. Whether or not VR is going to take off is literally the multi-billion-dollar question. So I think let's first have the panel introduce itself before I go on.
So my name is Reynir Hardarsson. I'm the co-founder of Sólfar.
Santtu Parikka from Helsinki. I'm running a CGI animation company.
Hey, Chet Valsek, developer at Valve, working on HTC Vive and Steam VR.
And I'm Dadi Einarsson, founder and creative director of RVX, which is a visual effects company here in Reykjavik.
So here's my first question. Between something that's going to be a big mainstream movement and something that's just a fad or acute distraction, how long is it going to take for us to know? Where's the tipping point where something becomes here to stay?
Well, that's a great question, and we're super excited. I hope Chat has answers for that.
It's a cute distraction.
Yeah, there's a problem with too much hardware needed at the moment.
Yeah, but I think it's going to take some time. It's maybe not going to launch as an avalanche, because we're still working on the tweaks and fine tuning the stuff. But I'm absolutely certain that it's going to happen. The question is really when. And we've seen some amazing, advancements in the technology, especially, with your latest stuff, which I saw at GTC. It's mind-blowing for those who haven't seen it. It's absolutely taking virtual reality to, the next level. But then it's going to be a multi-year thing.
Yeah, but still, when consumers will have good experience at home, and there's a big step to be had in buying into VR.
So what's going to be the cost of introduction of this hardware? We have things like Project Morpheus, but with the Vive, for instance, I mean, that's shown off on high-end PCs in a room. Do you think, this is a question for you, do you think that's how the majority of consumers will be interacting with that technology?
Well, I mean, first, you can do seated, you can do a small volume, you can do a big volume. It goes up to the 15-foot across. I mean, that's we showed kind of the best case scenario. We don't expect everybody to have that much room. But really, what are you doing with your dining room? In the U.S., it's an empty room. You kind of stare at it and you feel bad you own. But no, you don't need that. There's different levels of that. I mean, the hardware to run 90 frames per second, a sizable experience is going to take a lot, right? That will be a high-end PC. And so we'll see that. But if you look at Steam, on Steam we published the hardware stats, and you can take a look at what that audience looks like today, and you can extrapolate out what normal video card adoption is. You see it's a sizable audience then. I mean, the thing is, what have you had to buy a video card for in the past 3 or 4 years? There's been no game that's pushed it, right? It used to be the Crisis release or something, right? And we just haven't seen that lately. And so now we have something that's pushing that again. And I think the video card guys, definitely looked up and they're doing work to make it a good experience. And so, we'll see more going on there.
And we have people on the panel actually working in virtual effects. And this kind of gives you an excuse to try new things. How much further can we take special effects than what we see in the new Avengers movie? Now we get to the point where even basic things in front of us are exciting again.
Well, I think it's super fun and interesting to work on VR. And it's kind of being privileged to be able to do that thing. And that's also the problem, because consumers don't have that. And there's a certain problem at the moment then.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right. I think, like we were talking about this, that in terms of visual effects for film and for TV, I think we've almost maxed out in terms of the wow factor. It's, there's still great films that are going to be made for conventional theater, but in terms, people are just oversaturated with being blown away, and you can't really blow people away in the theater anymore. I mean, I think, Avatar, Gravity, where do you go from there? I think, people in our industry are really, and certainly the studios, I imagine, are looking for ways to, engage people more and blow them away again, and kind of get people on the novelty of it again, that this is a visual experience, because I think we've kind of done as much as you can with a traditional format.
Yeah, again, that's a great possibility. Like as a developer or an artist, like go there because the movie industry is so, like you need 1,000-foot team for that kind of visual effects. So it's a great new media, and it's fun. But still, there's a problem like how to get it to the masses, how to get many people to experience that.
I mean, and that's the main challenge we see with virtual reality. As someone who writes about this stuff and is lucky enough to travel to places like this and see CCP's technology and take demos, I've seen most of the consumer hardware that's coming out or that's already out with things like Gear VR, and it's amazing. Then I write about it, and like most of the audience doesn't believe me. They think it's vapor, or they think it's BS, or they think it's hype. How do you deal with a technology that you almost explicitly need to see to understand?
Well, it's, like I say, I think it's just a question of time, really. Once for me, it was a moment where I just truly believed it. It was kind of a religious moment. I had seen, virtual reality, throughout the decades, and it was always like a joke. But then all of a sudden, I saw the room demo, and it just totally changed me. It totally convinced me that this is coming, because you absolutely feel presence. You're absolutely in the world, and there's no nausea to it. It's amazing. And that just, opened the possibility. Now we've, established a platform, a stepping stone, to be actually able to take it further. Because once you take it further, how is virtual reality going to be in, 5, 10 years? The potential are absolutely crazy and potentially, civilization destroying. So, super exciting.
Something to drop right in the middle.
So yeah, but that's also one thing that I thought about looking at it, because I feel it's a totally new medium. It's very different from games, and I often use the analogy that maybe abstract game concepts don't work as well. It's a new medium, like you talked about. And for me, I often use the example of Sudoku. Sudoku is a terrible virtual reality example because it's a purely abstract game mechanic. And the funny thing is, every time I mention Sudoku as a potential VR thing, everybody's thinking, oh, what about the texture of the paper and how the pencil might move around? But that's already a visual experience. That's why I'm so excited to potentially working with guys like Santtu and Daði, doing VR from the artistic high-end visual effect, because never before has visual fidelity been more important. As an example, you're looking at a plant or nature, or you're at a beach. Let's make an example. You're at a beach. If the beach doesn't look amazing, it's kind of pointless being at that beach. And I think it's a new kind of thinking, and new exciting times ahead.
I think it's very exciting, particularly from our end, in terms of visual effects, because we come from an industry it is quite saturated, and we're kind of working backwards. We're working from the point of our end product has been kind of high-end photoreal visual effects, like top level, high fidelity. And that's, we're kind of working towards the gaming industry, real-time stuff. And, being at this kind of voyage of discovery, it's bleeding edge stuff, it's kind of pushing the envelope, all of those things. And it's very exciting for us to dip our toe into that market and that kind of experience.
So just to that end, not devil's advocate to that, but one of the coolest things we've seen is you can take something like, if you take a look at screenshots of Alchemy's job simulator, it's a cartoon. It is super low def, and that is as real as any of the other experiences. Your brain just does this quick trick of if it thinks it's really there, it's like, yeah, I'm in a cartoon today, this is my world, whatever, I don't know. Like, I can never tell if like your brain's just really stupid or just super adaptable, like, yeah, it's a cartoon, man, just be cool, be cool. Yeah. Right? But your brain just does that really quick. That's the cool thing, is you can go high end or you can go low end. Yeah. As long as it's consistent and real, your brain's like, all right.
Absolutely, I was totally on board with that. I was maybe imagining there's a new version of the Uncanny Valley, which is the reality valley. It has to be pretty, it's not as bad as the humans, but now you notice weird stuff like normal maps don't work in 3D, and sprites look like it's all fake. You see the fakery. So yes, either go cartoons or go but the middle ground is it has to establish a certain fidelity to be able to be worthwhile. That's kind of my thoughts on it, really.
But I'm interested. Do you think that that's, the very simple stuff? Do you think that works now because it's so new, and that then when the platform develops and people become used to it, that then the higher fidelity stuff will still live, or do you think is it equally as fun to be in the simple stuff?
Yeah, I think the simple stuff stays. Just me. I was a total doubter of VR. A year and a half ago when I got the demo internally. It's like, oh wow, okay. I'll move my desk down. And so I've been doing experiences every week for hours and regularly doing it. And still, like playing Job Sim, I've dropped the mushroom on the other side of the table, and I've reached underneath the table because I didn't want to go through the table because my brain just, hey, that might be a table. And so that I still can't help myself from that, even though I know really well. It's just something that still engages me. Your brain is just so trusting your visual systems that I think as long as it's consistent, as long as it behaves the way you think it would in that world, it buys into it. And I think that's going to stick.
I guess my point, sorry, just like early stereo films were just like stereo, and there was shit apart from that, right? And I'm talking like 1980s, But then, like today, they have to be great films that have stereo. So I'm thinking, maybe we're in a period now where you can get away with doing very, very simple stuff because of the novelty of it. Because, it's so new that your brain's getting messed around by this thing. But, maybe with time, or maybe not, but maybe with time, you will need to tell much more engaging stories and have much more visual fidelity or not.
There's those
no one knows. That's the point. No one knows. But that's where we're, that's our entry point into it. So
there's those famous anecdotes from the early days of cinema where you would have the train going towards the camera or the bandit gun, and people in the theater were supposed to duck. Right. And then we look at those clips now and we go, oh my gosh, it's in grainy black and white. How did anyone think that was real? Well, VR is in kind of the same space. Exactly. You can throw a polygon cube at someone's head and they're going to duck because we have no defenses against the technology right now.
Yeah, that's one thing that is, in my opinion, a real problem, because most people have been getting their first VR experience in some kind of roller coaster that might just throw you to the floor, and then there are these funny videos about the experience being kind of funny from outside, and it's not necessarily really good experience you get. There's the nausea and whatnot, and it's not playing. We are not playing the strengths. It's just really a trick you do. See, I can make you move in a funny way.
Oh yeah, I mean we're at such the infancy. I always, to me, the example that I grew up with, so I could tell, was go watch an early Twilight Zone, the originals. They're horrible and slow. They are really slow. Or $6 Million Man. I can't believe as a kid I thought this was good. This takes 2 hours to say a 5-minute story. But at the time, for TV, that's where the audience was, and that's what they could keep with. We didn't have MTV, we didn't have the fast cuts, we didn't have all that stuff. And so the language of storytelling was slower back then, and you accepted it and you grabbed it. We don't really have the vocabulary fully yet on VR. There's a bunch of stuff we're exploring, and we're going to find things. We're going to learn how to talk about it. And just having that vocabulary will help us understand it better, and we're just not there yet.
And there's a kind of a challenge of communication. We were talking about this on Twitter a few days ago, where the gaming blogs run stories like Grand Theft Auto 5 is working in VR using the Vorpix driver and a hack-together solution, and it's terrible. To get a working game in VR, you have to build it from the ground up, and there's an education that needs to happen where people are like, oh, I'm going to get my Project Morpheus and day one be playing Killzone in virtual reality.
Right, exactly. And that is, for me, that was the most interesting lesson. Doing VR is much, much harder than we thought it would be. My initial thought was yes, of course, you just turn any game into it. But no, it's 1,000 little things. It's super hard, actually.
Yeah, at the moment, it seems like the best VR content is something that nothing moves and you don't move. Then it's
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and the other thing, I guess, people have been talking for somewhere between 10 and 15 years about the convergence of game and film. And, I've never really seen where that's going to happen. Just in my mind, it's been that the visual fidelity of game is getting so great and, whatever. But I'm pretty convinced that the convergence of game and film is in VR. I don't know exactly what form it's going to take. I don't think anyone knows. But that's definitely the journey that we're on, I think.
And it's interesting because someone earlier in the program was saying that they describe games are for doing and movies are for showing. And I've seen some of the narrative films that people have released in VR. Oculus has some experiments, and it blends the line. Like, just by being inside it, three-dimensional, and looking around, and things are triggered when you look at them, just as people react around you when you turn and lock eyes with them. Like, those terms are almost going to be antiquated. Even narrative films are going to feel interactive, and you can put those hooks to draw people in.
Certainly. I mean, even things like editing, you know, I mean, one of the things I saw, one of the first things Thor showed me, the Beck concert in the Oculus. Yeah. And that, just a simple thing like, well, not simple, but that blew my mind, because I was controlling which camera I was looking through. And I could control from like 4 different cameras or go on stage next to Beck. And for me, that was just crazy. Like, you know, the extension of that could be you could edit your own film. You know, everyone sees their own version of a movie because maybe you've got like 4 edit streams happening throughout, and all of them can be inter-edited between however you want. So no one ever sees the same version of the film. And someone, you know, if you imagine a film like Birdman, like 4 different cuts of that, and you could just go from whatever camera being first person or whatever, you know. I think there are so many possibilities even just there.
There are theater experiences that happen in some cities where you can kind of walk through a house and there's different scenes taken forward, and everyone experiences slightly different. It would be very interesting to create a game like that where narration happens in different rooms at different times and you have to explore it. It doesn't take there's no interaction, but just the movement and the witnessing and feeling like you're there. It's talking about these things to people who haven't tried VR, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But once you've been inside these experiences, it's such a leap.
Yeah, you just mentioned the word experience, and that's more like better word than games or films, or like in that sense, it seems like what we are creating are experiences, and it's like being on another place, and actual gameplay isn't that important anymore.
And it's funny, it's like there's always that like formalist movement out there where people are like, oh, Gone Home isn't a game, like there's not a lose, like these people are going to lose their mind when things that are released for $10, where it's like, you look to fly around. And that's the entirety of the game. And it's barely interactive, and there's no goals, and it is amazing. Like, I've played very basic flying or undersea simulations and stayed in for half an hour because it's neat to be in these environments.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the one thing that blew me away when I saw the room. I think you guys were involved in that. The room demo is the most amazing piece of technology demo I've ever seen in my life. But it was the worst demo content-wise. I've never seen anything as horrible as the content that we're actually showing. It was literally just boxes of polygons with nothing. But it was just mind-blowing. So, but you know, that novelty, you know, if I've seen like 5 or 10 box demos, maybe, you know, I'll get enough of it. But yeah, I'm with you on that. But another thing which I found was very important is once you've touched the world through, you know, the controllers you're doing, or through Leap Motion, you know, that type of, then you kind of never want to come back. I want to, you know, be able to interact with the world, even just in a small way, just touch it a little bit or open a drawer, or, you know. It's like, yeah. So for me, it's not enough to sit passively and listen. Maybe it works, but I've just not seen yet narrative things which were completely uninteractive.
But that's, I think you mentioned it as well in your talk, but like the VR headset, it's not one thing. It kind of merges so many different things. You know, it's the TV, it's the film, it's the play, it's the theater. I mean, you could be sitting in a concert or being on stage with, like, you know, Rolling Stones or whatever. You know, it basically places you in whatever you can think of. So it has so much potential for being so many different things. You know, so we're talking about where is it going as if it's one place where it's going. It's going everywhere, you know. It's like, it can be anything.
Still, it seems like there's a huge way to go to the situation where this was a good business, in the sense that people would be buying those as easily as they're buying games. Like, people would have VR sets at home. So at the moment, it seems like you need a lot of wire and helmets and maybe some things that help you to control the whole experience. Maybe you have to walk on certain kind of thing over there. Like, it's all really interesting, but like seeing the consumer part is interesting. And it's like, we are excited that we can make this stuff, but is it just really small niche in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to find out this year, right? We know what has been out there. We know what has worked and not worked so far. But this will be the first time that kind of what's been underneath this generation's shot at it is going to catch on or not. It tends to be you really do have to see it before you believe it. I mean, I worked with the guys who worked on the room stuff, and I didn't believe it till they dragged me down to see it. And then it was instantaneous, right? And so it's as people get to see it, they'll have to make that judgment then on what they want. But until you see it, it really is just, you can't describe it. It just doesn't work right.
Do you think it's going to take people becoming evangelists for the technology almost for you? I mean, people who are going to buy one of these systems with a controller on day one, and they're going to invest in the money, and they likely already have a high-end PC. Like, do you talk about in terms of the growth curve of like the first gen, and then they show 10 people and maybe 2 of those people, and then it spirals out that way?
Well, like as we start getting out dev kits later this spring, all those dev kits will come with experiences with them that you can show to the people you work with, to other people. And this is the idea of, we know we can't just give you a headset and go, good luck, right? We need to be able that you can help understand it. You know, and I think Slush Play is actually a cool event for having the money people here, because this year you're going to need that. There's a big speculative bet, and there's nothing you can sell until this thing launches. And it's not like a console launch. Console launch, we knew when the PS2 launched, we kind of knew how to make games at that point. We knew what we were going to do on that. Yeah, it's way more powerful. We're going to do cool things. But here, right? And so we talk a lot to that side of the equation with developers, because, you know, you need to be careful for a reason, right? And it's going to be an interesting year as we kind of sort this out.
Do we worry about how much money is being invested in virtual reality? I mean, from the Facebook deal on down to the VC money coming in, this is going to be a slow burn if it happens at all.
Well, it kind of all starts with the Facebook investment, in the sense that defined that there's a market. So
well, it defined that a major player thought there might be a market.
Yeah, but then that's why there are like new hardware coming. There's a lot of interest because people are like, there has to be a market because they just put $2 billion down. Are they stupid or what? So that's the major driver, of course, like why there's so much happening. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't make it. It might be the thing that pushes it now, so that the thing comes.
I also think it's just, you know, it's one of these things that has to happen. It's like we've seen this on the horizon for like, you know, decades. It's one of these things that just has to come into reality. And I think there's a lot of people, you know, share that, you know, dream or, you know, madness. So it's like a prophecy that has to be fulfilled. That's kind of my thing. And I think a lot of, you know, people are, you know, looking at it from a, you know, business point, but they're mostly looking at it from an emotional point also. There's a lot of emotional resonance, you know. Everybody wants virtual reality, you know, that's the dream.
So in terms of the content that's going to drive adoption, I'm curious if you folks have any thoughts about what the game or experience is going to look like that's going to be kind of the Wii Sports of VR, that one thing that everyone has to try that's really going to pull people in, even if they're not into games that much.
It's about the beautiful content that was talked earlier, and definitely avoiding those like nausea things or like kind of bad experiences which play with the wrong senses, like especially the roller coaster ones. That when you start with your first VR experiences like that, if my mom tried that, she would say that, oh, I tried VR and I didn't like it. And that doesn't take us to the right place.
I mean, I agree. You know, that's kind of obviously our entry point and where we're coming from, and we're betting on that it has to be visually mind-blowing. You know, that's what'll engage people. That's what'll get people talking about how incredible it is. I mean, I get what you're saying about just the simple stuff as well, and I'm sure in a way it'll be a lot of different things for different people. You know, it's but certainly I would be shooting for something just mind-blowingly, you know, real and beautiful. Yeah,
I'm totally with you on that one, because as we see the platform moving forward and the technology is getting better and better, and we've seen amazing, you know, progress with companies like NVIDIA. like 30 to 40% increase just with the Titan X. We're going to see the capabilities of doing this, and for me, I see this is where I want to see the medium go, into like this extremely beautiful. Of course, I want to see all kinds of stuff, but I think, yeah, for me, coming from an artistic background, when I go to a movie, for me, cinematography, sound, is as important than, as the story itself.
Yeah, so, I just think it's going to be really diverse. Like, yeah. I don't think there's going to be that single thing.
Absolutely.
The first time we had Google sent us up a build of Google Earth, and the first thing we did was, and so the build of Google Earth is what you can actually do is walk around like Godzilla in any place where there's 3D data for Google Earth, which is a ton of places. It ends up pretty much everyone's hometown, because the first thing we did was figure out how to hack it to put in our own addresses and then go walk around your hometown in Google Earth. And that was that was the entire night, everybody just doing that all night, and we eventually just had to go home. And so like that was an experience I didn't think would have been that impactful, because I thought like, I know the map of Seattle, I understand it, and then actually walk through Seattle, a place I've been a bunch of times, but I walk a path that I don't normally, and I understand that city, and I understand that part of the city so much differently and better, that made me want to go everywhere I'd been. It makes me want to go to cities before I go there. Mm. And so like that all of a sudden opens up, and so what other things can be like that? And there's just such a wide range of things out there.
It's interesting to me because when we look at the big sellers in terms of like console games and PC games, there's so much violence out there. Partly because it's so easy to make an interactive game with violence as a means of communication. When you have virtual reality where you're actually in the game, it's not easy. It's hard to do it effectively. But when you have something where you're inside it, if you ask someone, if I sat down most of you and said, what are the top 5 things you would like to do? Like murder someone would probably not be on the list for most people. It's like, oh, I would love to fly. I want to go to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. Like going into space without a spacesuit would be cool. And people understand that innately, and we're getting such a great wide range of experiences on VR, exploring these kind of dreamlike realities that don't have a lot of violence in them, which I think is an amazing part of the technology.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing observation. I hadn't thought of it. When you stab someone in VR, it's almost like doing it in reality.
It's like, terrible. No one wants to actually stab someone.
Right.
Which brings us to the other point. Pornography is probably going to be really popular on virtual reality. Because if you ask people what are the top 5 things they enjoy doing, well, if they're being honest... Walking the dog, exactly, cleaning the house. I believe that's about all the time we have. Thank you so much to the panelists, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.